have some sound. Seth, can you try again? I switched the source, and it looks like it's moving now, so... Also, this mic I have to, like... Yeah. I just need you to try away from me, otherwise the feedback happens, you know. Hello, Ernest. I like saying hi to people through the mic when they walk right in. That's fun. How about now? Is there any sound? There's usually a delay. What's the sound? Okay, I can hear that. Hold on. Picking up. And why is it not hearing me? It stopped. Do I come back? Because... There we go. Okay, we have audio. It's almost 6:30, but we're probably going to wait a little bit, like 5 more minutes longer for people to keep trickling in, and everybody can enjoy some pizza and some Falling Sky beer. And yeah, get started shortly. How's the audio? Is that in here at least? I know on stream it's probably not very good. Sorry, stream. Sorry. Um, Good. Everybody is. Some thumbs up from people. The audio is okay. Okay. Got a thumbs up. Caesar. Thumbs up. Okay. I'll probably leave the audio here. Want to find seats and stuff. We'll probably get started here in a second. I'm gonna not close the door all the way, but leave it ajar so people can still get in as people are. So if you want to grab a slice or another beer from Falling Sky, thank you so much, Falling Sky. Um, yeah, for sure. Woo! Um, please do that, and we'll get started here in just a minute or two. Now that I got things set up. Okay, I think we'll probably get started now. People might still trickle in. That's okay. Be happy to recap for people later on. So, thank you for coming to this. This is the Eugene Web Devs meetup. For anybody who, yeah, woo! For anybody who, this is your first time, these are monthly meetups. We're usually a technical group of developers here, engineers here around Eugene. And we meet up and we talk about that kind of stuff. Code, this or that, database, this or that, or stuff. Today is going to be much more general, because I think this topic's really, really broad. And it affects a lot of people. So, we're not going to get too technical, not really. Hopefully, if you have any questions, feel free to shout them out during the presentation, that's fine. Going to go over some of the things that we've all been hearing about, and how some of those things work. So, I am Antonio. I organize the meetup here. I'm a senior engineer at a company called 20 Ideas, and yeah, I mean, that's basically it. First off, some thank yous. Thank you, IDX. IDX is the space we're in right now. This is a real estate data company. I used to work for them. It was great. I really enjoyed it. And they were gracious enough to let us meet up here on their couches and drink their soda and all that stuff. So thank you so much to them. All the woes. Everybody wants to woo anytime. Go for it. Thanks to 20 Ideas, who I work for now. Currently, they're a great company as well. I really enjoy working there, and they're very supportive of all the local developer community things that I'm a part of. Also, thank you to the district. They helped me get some of the word out. I don't know if anybody got the word out through there. This is a co-working space over on 5th above Nike. So, yeah, it's a cool space to work in. If you're looking for an office, they do have offices available. Feel free to grab their, I brought some like little poster thingies on the table there. But thank you to them. And thanks, lastly, but no, not lastly. Thanks to Slice. They're nice enough to help me get the pizza here on time and hot. Yeah, Yeah. And if you haven't been to Slice, they have two locations. They have one in the Whitaker and one just right down the block. They're on Lavender Broadway. So please visit them. They're a great local company. I used to get their pizza for my meetups when they were just a food cart. Not just a food cart, when they were a food cart uh, before they went brick and mortar. So I always really enjoyed their pizza. And finally, thank you so much to Falling Sky for showing up. Yeah, double woo. Thank you so much for showing up and pouring beers and hanging out. And hopefully I don't bore you too much with my talk. Okay, so this is going to be a not technical talk, like I had mentioned before. We're going to keep things pretty basic for the most part. If I go off the rails and go a little too far, just let me know. We can tone it down. So we've all heard and seen all these new services, AI services that are coming out, and these are for developers. The first one was GitHub Copilot, which I'm going to talk about briefly. It is a code writing AI, and that came out last year. We did a talk on it here for web devs on what it does, what it can do, what it's good at, what it's not good at. But lately, the big chat has been around ChatGPT. Text, it creates text for us and understands natural language. And right towards the end, I think, of last year, we started talking about things like Stable Diffusion, which is image generation. So now we have a lot of different pieces in play for the AI landscape. And in general, this is the sentiment I saw, no AI. Like that was just the general reaction to a lot of these announcements of, hey, you can use this new AI for your work, for fun, all these things. But the knee-jerk reaction I saw was definitely no. Yeah, these are all the buzz. And so they're basically just a couple categories, like I said, text and images. Hasn't been too much buzz on audio, but that works. Okay, there we go. So, just so you know, anytime I have an AI image or AI something that's been generated, you'll see that little thing doing its thing up here in the corner. So this is not an image that I got from, this is a brand new generated images from, I think I used Stable Diffusion for this, for my site. So I am using AI in this presentation. So the popular end of the year articles are pretty typical of any sort of automation. The big question is, oh, yeah? Oh, yeah, sorry. All the slides and all the links will be available. I will post a document on the Meetup group that will have links to everything in here. So you don't have to copy anything down. You will find the links, the slides, link to the video. Apologize again for the audio, I'm sure. And yeah, so it will all be available on that Meetup link. Yep. So the last part of the news was all these articles saying, can AI replace artists? Like I said, with Stable Diffusion coming out, Midjourney. Can it replace artists? That was the big question. And that's a question we always ask. Can AI replace humans? Because machines can and have before. They have replaced humans. And I think this is a good question to ask to start, but it always seems to end the same way, I think. I think it's a timeless question. This is an article from the 1890 of the lace industry. So the lace industry was a very artisanal, intricate craft, and then things started to get automated. And this article is talking about that and how the cheapness of mass production kind of shifted the lace industry in general. So now we have all these people buying lace, but not buying it by handmade because it costs more. I think that's an interesting point, and it was true back then, and it's true now. People will buy the cheapest thing that's easy to get. But I do like the summary they have here, which is saying that the difference is the craft, what do they say here? The beauty, the finish, and the touch. These are human elements that you can find in handmade crafts, but in automated and mass-produced things. And I think that's true today. So that's something we need to take away when we start seeing this. Developers, like I said, we had the same question. These are exactly the same articles, regardless of industry. Will this thing replace humans? And the answer for, which I really like this one. Like I said, this service is called Copilot. will Copilot replace humans? The name is Copilot. That means there should be a pilot. Like, in the marketing, it's telling you it's not going to replace humans, but everyone is still going to churn out YouTube videos and articles saying, is this the end of programmers? Is this the end of this or that? Even if the name is implying it is absolutely not. So, I think it's important to address that question, and yeah, people still like lace. You buy some Etsy right now if you want to buy some handmade lace. If that's, important to you, the touch, the finish, the beauty of the lace. If it's not, then you're probably going to go to the craft store and just get something for $5. So actual jobs do get replaced. These used to be called pin boys. They would reset the pins when you went bowling. And I think industries like this that don't have a touch, don't have that human element to it. There's no pin boy who's going to put the pins back up in such an elegant way that I'm going to stop my bowling and be impressed. There's just not. So, when we talk about replacing humans, this is, I think, what we're actually talking about. And a lot of the rest is hype and taking advantage of natural affairs. I don't know what that guy in the middle does. He's the manager? Doesn't Foreman? So he is. Yeah. He might have opinions on the elegance and grace of the pin boys, but I don't. Not as a consumer. So what is AI selling if it's not selling this touch, this finish? A couple things. Accessibility to these AI models. And I'll go into what a model is and all that stuff here in a second. OpenAI definitely already has a monetized version of it for their various AI services. Midjourney doesn't, as far as I know right now. It still runs through a Discord server, so it's still free. There's free versions of lots of this stuff. And I think that'll be true for a long time. But it's pretty clear to me that a lot of the marketing right now in the free versions are just to generate hype, to then transition to bigger and better things for them. The first clue I have for that is easy automation. It only takes this for a developer to make a call and get an image. This is super easy, and they will just charge you for it, and it will be the service you use, because training your own models is very difficult and prohibitively expensive for most people. The fact that they even started with this kind of developer-first kind of way makes me think they are targeting businesses, not individuals. They're not trying to replace individuals. They are trying to supplement businesses doing this for themselves, which is probably translates to more money. So if you haven't used ChatGPT, this is what it looks like. It is a text prompt. You type in a question or something, ask it for something, or you just have a conversation, and it will answer you. In this instance, I asked it to write a description of itself. So I know it's an animated GIF, so it's hard to read. But this is the description. I won't read it because I think everybody can read. But it gives a very generic version of what it does. And what it's saying is it's an AI that was trained, and it will answer stuff in natural language, like in a nutshell. What they don't tell you is what it was trained on, and I think that's important. ChatGPT was trained on Wikipedia, public domain books, and a whole lot of scraping of the internet. So there's no real way for me to say that something in a blog post I wrote when I was a kid or whatever wasn't affected or wasn't used in their training. We don't know. And there's no real good way to trace it back. Yeah. No. And the reason for that is it creates more context around it, and it usually it's almost always a brand new answer because it is trying to make a brand new answer every single time. And this is true for images too, which I have a slide for that. Yes, probably. It would be very, very similar, but yep, because it is trying to make something brand new every single time. This is not like a Google search or whatever stuff indexed. However, this is trying to attach context around your question, and it may or may not have the same context every single time. Just like a lot like a person. You ask the same person the same question, you may get a slightly different answer that probably has the information you need, but structured a little differently. So it's important. That is important to remember with all this AI stuff. It is new stuff. It is not copying and pasting and slicing things up and reiterating. It is trying to make something new every single time, based on context. And this is done for it, at least with parameters. What it's going to do, I asked it a question. I said to explain in the meaning of, you can't judge a book by its two birds with one stone. And, the Open API doesn't care. That's silly. But it's going to try and figure it out. What it does is it starts attaching parameters to the words and to provide itself context. So, Bert, that's a noun, means singular, one, these things. And it starts attaching a lot of parameters. And humans do too. All these words mean many, many things to any individual human. So AI is now trained with, I think right now it has 170-something billion parameters that it attaches to any one phrase. Or could attach to any one phrase. And the next version is set to go into the trillions. I'm not even sure how many. So that means that's a lot of work. That's a lot of stuff. Who did all that? I think these are really interesting questions. Who's deciding what these parameters are and what these associations are? Especially when in the prompt there at the very bottom for OpenAPI, it says, that there are guidelines, there are rules of what it will and will not talk about. So one of the things, it won't tell you how to commit a crime. It has an idea of what a crime is. But somebody had to tell it that, and what if we all disagree on what a crime is? Yeah, Chris? So, it will tell you a story about a crime and how that happened, but it won't tell you how to commit a crime. This is like when people say allegedly at the end of their sentences, right? I allegedly did this. So when I asked it that question about the two birds, the book, and all that, it did understand that it's a variation. It did understand that there's two phrases there. It got a lot of the context. It didn't respond like a human and say, "Oh, that's just silly. You're just nonsense." Instead, it tried its best to figure out what I was getting at, and it did this by finding patterns, which isn't really intelligence. It's really just categorization and statistical analysis. So, this makes it good at journalism with structure. So journalism, scientific papers, code have a really tight structure. It's better and better at. It does fail a little bit when you start trying to trick it, and there's some things it just straight up won't answer. And if it doesn't have context, it can't answer. Its trading data set stops in, I think, 2001. So it probably knows nothing about the Wednesday Addams dance. And all this is really going for some kind of monetization. Who needs this? Who's going to use this? The answer for at least OpenAPI is probably Microsoft and Bing. This is really going to change things when instead of getting a list of links, we get an answer for a question, not a link to the question that might have the answer for the question we asked. What that's going to do for things like SEO or marketing, I'm not sure. Oh, Ryan. So, cleaning up mammal blood is a useful skill. Not going to lie. That can happen, unfortunately. And that's, because of your phrasing, it's not really a crime. It could have been yours. Maybe you fell down. You're a mammal. So we don't really, yeah. So, examples of it trying to trick it isn't, but that's because it's not intelligent. Further proof that this is, artificial intelligence is more of a buzzword than an accurate representation of what these services and models can do. For money, again. This is the point, it's going to be for money. So, real quick, I want to get kind of technical and talk about how machines learn in a nutshell for anybody who has not been exposed to machine learning. I won't get too deep, I swear. It's not going to be terrible, I hope. Oh, sorry. So, the first thing is we need a data set. And in this case, for like ChatGPT, like I said, Wikipedia, open source books, and just scraping the publicly available pages on the internet, it's a very big data set already. We then have to train our machine to recognize patterns within the data. We feed it the data, and it will look for patterns. After that, we'll get something that's either a prediction or a new generation, and then we refine it. Some human still at the end is like, yeah, that's pretty good, or no, that's way off. We change we'll go back through the process again, maybe change the data, maybe change the model, maybe change some other things. And that's, it's 1, 2, 3, that's not hard. So an example of data is this. This is a smiley face. And but to a machine, it's going to be the zeros and ones. In this instance, the zeros represent black pixels, and the ones represent white pixels. So this one piece of data sample by itself isn't a whole lot to find a pattern. But when we start introducing another smiley face that actually is slightly different, we can start seeing patterns. Is those black squares, for example. And machines are really good at finding patterns. So instead of just 2, our data set probably wants to be like in the hundreds of thousands, millions, big as we can get, really. So what does it do with that? How does it really learn? It's we start feeding the data into this neural network. All the orange, are they orange on the screen? Okay, yeah, orange are the input, which are going to be pieces of any one piece of that data set in this example. Again, this is really oversimplified. We're going to try to find connections with those green nodes, which are going to be statistical math. They're going to be tuning themselves to see if this piece is part of what you're asking for, or next to this piece, the relationship between there. And it's a lot of math. It gets real fast. So we're just going to call it magic math and not worry about it. At the end, we get some sort of prediction. This is a smiley face, or here's a new smiley face. If it's not, we run it through again and try again until we start getting results that a human is deemed good. Hope that all made sense. And at the end, we're going to get something like this, where it's going to predict that it's going to generate new smiley faces for us, that one's winky, one's maybe frowny. That's probably within the acceptable parameter, so it's what we decide. And some are square, some are more circular, but they're all agreeable to be a smiley face in this model. And that's what machines are good at, finding patterns. And patterns are everywhere. So they become really good at a lot of things really quickly, seeing patterns that we don't see, off the top of our heads or just at first glance. We have to really dig to find. They're going to find them much quicker than we will. And this is a good example of the golden ratio inside the Mona Lisa many times over. So this new AI image generation is actually a bunch of those models that I just showed. One of them takes in the text, natural language, as part of that interface. All these interfaces are trying to have natural language as the prompt. Then there's a different neural networking model that is good at generating images. And a last one that's good at validating images, saying, yes, that image you generated is what the person asked for. These all work together in one big system that is expensive to run and super expensive to develop. But, again, thanks all the services, they are very much accessible. So what does that look like in practice? This is a painting by Elisa Brown, local artist who's right there, if anybody wants to talk to her about it. And there's her Instagram if anybody wants to buy pictures of pretty wolves or other things. Just hit her up. So I asked her to write a description of her painting. And this is what she wrote. I won't read it because, nobody can read. But it's very descriptive. It's a great description, I agree. So I took this, and then I fed it to a website called Crayon, which runs a model called Dolly 2. Full version of it. It's the mini version. And I did this on the browser of my phone. And it generated these images based on that description she gave me. I think they're pretty good. I don't think they're as good as her painting. I think, like that article from 1890 said, they like the finish, the touch, that a human will put on art. But if I just needed some pictures of kind of psychedelic wolves, this does fit the bill. And from my phone. This led to the trend kind of in the end of the year of the avatar, the AI-generated avatar. This is a local guy about town, Matt Sayer. Some people might know. This was one of his, and it's okay. He used it as his avatar, and it's not bad. And I also think it's a really good example of, like I was saying earlier, that you don't necessarily care about the touch and the finish of your Facebook avatar, Twitter avatar, Instagram avatar. So this, for whatever app he used, which was maybe $5, is perfectly fine. I don't think, I think Matt does like art, but I don't think he's going to commission a portrait when he just feels like updating his Facebook profile. So I think that's important to remember when the question is, will it replace us? I don't think that's a much more difficult question than will replace all artists. For anybody who produces art on a mass scale, like mass production art, if you're an artist who makes art for, say, Target, maybe it might replace you. It can write Live, Laugh, Love just like anybody else can. Person. So, how does it even do it? And this is something we touched on earlier. Everything's brand new with all of these. And it's no different from images. I think when it comes to images, we assume that it's going to slice it up, like take his face or some face, and then make a new image using pieces. But instead what it does is it starts with that first one up here, which is just a bunch of noise. When humans create art, we start with a blank canvas usually, and we start adding paint where we think it should go. When we do this, instead we find it's much better to put all the paint basically on the screen, and then start moving it around and randomizing it until it starts becoming more of a form. So it's very counterintuitive. But what it does mean is that every image it generates is new, which is why if you have the same prompt, or even the same image as a prompt, which I'll show in a minute, you're going to get a new image, a slightly different image every single time. Because it's never starting at the same base and following the same process. It is starting with random noise and random movement of the noise until a form starts to come out, and the validation model says, oh yeah, that is that person. Or, oh yeah, that does satisfy the constraints of the prompt I was given. And even if it's only incremental, the machine's going to do it as many times as it can until it gets a satisfactory percentage of accuracy. So, I think this is a really important concept for the AI art because back to the copyright and stealing of images and stuff, none of this actually has the images that it took. It was trained. It only has an idea of the concept of what it learned by looking at all these images or reading all these books. It doesn't actually store those things and use them. It generates a new thing every single time. And I think that changes the conversation for a lot of people who just assume that it is more stealing. So, there's another conversation, especially with art, and text as well, literature, is aesthetic. So what happens when it starts to create things that are aesthetically pleasing? Well, what makes something aesthetically pleasing is a very interesting talk. It's a very different talk than this one. But I think it's a very interesting subject. This is a image. It won the Colorado State Fair, first place for the digital category. This was created in Midjourney, and the article about this is mostly about how this person used Midjourney over and over again by changing the prompt to get something, the image that he kind of had in his head, his creativity. But this now starts to raise a lot of questions about, like, well, what is the intrinsic value of this piece of art, and who did it? So, Midjourney is an online one, but you don't need to have access to these things. It's very simple and super accessible now. This is an app called Diffusion Bee. You can download it for your MacBook. I ran this one on a 2016 MacBook, so not a new one, and it generated stuff just fine. In this prompt, it has, or in this interface, it has the same kind of idea. You have a text prompt, and maybe a few more options in this one, and it generates a brand new image for you. And then maybe several images all at once. In this particular example, we were going for the style of the particular artist, a German artist, Gerhard Richter. Because these images already exist on the internet for Gerhard, it can understand this style. And the more images you have out there, and the more it's trained on, it will start to understand styles. Which means at some point I may be able to say, I want a picture in the style of Lisa Brown. This is an interesting idea that it's not just famous artists anymore. Everybody who has an image, every artist who has an image, everybody who puts out text, these AIs are training on those. Yours, mine, everybody. In the example for the code one, my code came up when I asked it for something that I did. Or not something, a service I worked on. I could tell it was mine. And it went through and used that. So I asked another artist around town. His Instagram is here as well, if anybody wants to commission or check out his stuff. So this is an original piece on the left using that same app, again, on a 2016 MacBook, so super accessible. You just download it, you don't have to code anything. I want the same, I want it in that style. I want something like this. So I ask it for, but I want it to be a man with a mustache and a plant on his head. That's the prompt, that's all I typed. A couple seconds later I get this image, which is more of a New Yorker style, I would say. That's what it looks like to me, you know. It may be Python, yeah. But it is not quite his style. It's not an ocean away. But if I let it iterate more, it starts to get closer. So this is the exact same prompt, but with more iterations. So now the machine's trying a little harder to fit the constraints of his style and find the patterns that his art has. And it can do not just new stuff, but it can continue. So that image from before, this is from the Colorado State Fair. I sliced off part of it, and I asked it to finish the painting. I only typed in the word pretty as the prompt, and gave it the image that was sliced off as the prompt, and it filled it in. It did a pretty good job of even filling in the woman that was standing there, even though there was part of a dress and not the rest of her. And it's, I guess, pretty. Sure, why not? And now this is starting to raise all sorts of other questions for me. Well, this is definitely derivative of that art. It is not transformative of that art. I think the examples before were more a transformation of the style and influence, and this is more just, I mean, by definition, it has half the damn painting in it. So, what does that mean? Whose painting is this now? Well, if we say the argument that's going on now, which is, well, the machine painted it, well, then no human owns it. A machine painted it, so I'm not infringing on anybody. These are, I think, really important and big questions that we should be asking about this kind of creation. It even does pop culture. So I just typed in R2D2 and it just kind of tried to add him in, shoehorn him in. Yeah, if you see the edge there, it's actually a continuation of the painting, and then it's just like, well, here's your R2. And there you go. It doesn't even fit. It's just, here you go. So that's not a picture of R2D2, remember. This is a generated new image of what it knows about R2D2. It is not an actual picture of R2D2. There's no slicing and dicing here. It's all generation. And I started asking about other things, like web design. So I said that I wanted an e-commerce plant site, and this was generated in Midjourney. It's okay, it's not bad. I'm not sure people would buy my plants if I had this, or how to make this into a mobile thing, but that's a web developer thing. I'm not going to talk about that right now. We put a web dev bit up on doing this, actually. And it even gives me a menu. So here's a couple examples of that same ask of this site, or website design. I chose the one in the bottom because it was more full. But then I started asking for website design styles. Right? There's minimal, New York, and retro. And those aren't great, but they are website design styles that I can get a base off of. And I can even say, hey, which one of these do I like more, and then research that one style more. And this is a lot harder to do with a human because I can't ask a human to make 5 things and only pay for one. I did specifically ask for talks. That is true. We'll see when I can get Eugene Web Dev Socks out to everybody. It'll be good. Probably one of these styles. I'm not sure which one. But what about things that are a little bit more investment heavy when we're asking people to create stuff? This is tattoos. I asked for a tattoo of a tree. That's all I asked it for. And these are not real images. These are generated. That's not a real person. It's not a real arm. You can see in some of them where like the tattoo kind of bleeds off of it. It's not perfect. But this could be a very useful guide for stuff like this, where we want a menu before we actually make the investment of getting it done. I do think it's a bit of a slippery slope. This image, I don't know if anybody's seen it, this is a deep fake of Arnold Schwarzenegger in Titanic. This is him falling in love with Jack and talking and whatnot. I don't remember, I haven't seen the movie. But people like it, people think it's funny. And I think it is funny, and it's funny for now, though. In this instance, we have a deep fake. That's going to lead to fake things, fake news, which is already a problem. I mean, fake everything. If this person was never in this movie, and yet they're in the movie, it is fake. And that can be a little disturbing when you start to think about it a little bit harder, because this could be anybody. There's pictures of my face on the internet. I could be in Titanic. Or I could be in a movie I really don't want to be in. Yeah, Chris? Yes. I think people will hide behind AI because it's easy to say, I didn't do it, the machine did it. I think that's a really easy one. Also, it's hard to find who makes stuff sometimes. When it's a mechanical fingerprint, not yours. Not your digital fingerprint, I guess, or your style. It is something that's completely new, not necessarily you're just kind of guiding it. So that is a layer between. And I think whoever did this, they know who they are. It's on their TikTok or whatever this is. And they take full credit for it. But it's not hard to imagine a world where this kind of content's going to be around and no one's going to take credit for it, and it's not going to be very great for anyone. Especially when it is like your local guy who rants about stuff at Web Devs Meetup, or somebody who works at Starbucks. Like, it really could affect everybody in that deeply. Which brings up a bunch of ethics. Who's going to validate? Right? So people are trying to hide behind it. Who's going to say that this was AI generated? My guess is going to be the people who generate it, and they're probably going to charge you for it. Yes, that's an old thing, right? You make a problem and you charge somebody for it, which I always get suspectful of when somebody's like, hey, here it is for free. Okay, cool. Thanks. And who's responsible? Are the people who generate these images responsible 100%, or is there a bit of responsibility for the people who make the tools? And who's going to regulate it? We already have problems with this, even in like current lawsuits. And there's a lawsuit right now for this AI-generated art especially, and ChatGPT, I'm pretty sure, and Copilot, all the services. And they're trying to prove whether things are derivative or not. Because if it's derivative, then it does violate copyright laws pretty quickly right there. I mean, that's just a violation. But that's going to be up to them to prove, and we don't really have a lot of basis for this. Even in the real world, a photographer sued, I think it was Andy Warhol, over a painting he did of a photo of Prince. So, and she won that one, I believe, but the exact same thing happened in Luxembourg, and that person lost. We don't have a tight answer for this yet. And now that everybody with a phone can do it, it's going to be a lot harder to figure out what the tight answer is ever going to be, if we ever get there. But the name of the talk was Finding Meaning. And all the meaning I've showed so far isn't that great, especially with that last piece. But I want to end on some positive vibes here. And the story of this artist, Sean. Here he's holding up a comically small version of the magazine pork that he used to do. And here's an artist here who he's from Oakland originally, now in Portland. And I first came in contact with his art via Oakshire, the beer company here locally in Eugene. This is Oakshire 1, so a long time ago, and he did the art for it, which I thought was great. It's super intricate, all done by hand. It's great, and that's what he did with his magazine and all sorts of art for a long, long time, his whole life. And then about 2 years ago, he unfortunately had a stroke. And he's left-handed. And like strokes do, you get paralysis on the left side. So now his strong arm, physically can't perform the way it was and be the tool it used to be for him. But that's not all doom and gloom, because now things like, and this is a reference from his blog post, these AI generators, specifically Midjourney for him, has been helping him achieve a sort of visually creative feeling that he hasn't felt for a long time. So all the potential is there for good and bad. And I think in this case, giving an artist a new lease on life when he thought he didn't have an artistic lease on life anymore, but the creativity was still there, I think that's a good thing. I think that's a positive thing. And he's generating AI art today. This is his Instagram. And these are compelling images from his creative mind that he's guiding this tool towards. So I think in that regard, there is meaning towards AI-generated content. So I don't really get to everything. I could talk all night about this, but nobody wants to hear me talk all night. One of the things was sound, for example, and more photorealism. The photorealism is on its way, I'm sure. Sound is also, if not here, on its way. With that comes, like I said, that package of fake everything. The entire thing can be fake. You don't need a source video. You don't need a source image. It just generates all of it. And complete with sound, meaning I could star in anything. And so could anyone else. So I have some takeaways for everybody. It's a new tool. It's not really a replacement. It's also really with this amount of any tool given to literally everybody who has a phone, there's going to be abuse. There's just going to be. But it's not going away, so maybe this is an opportunity for us to find the positive in all of this, which I think that one story shares that I shared is a lot. So thank you. That's my talk. So I've been up here ranting this whole time. Does anybody have their own rants or questions? Yeah. The reason it has to generate something new every time, so like for an image, right? Because they don't have the images. Once they do the training, the neural network model that is generated for understanding the patterns inside of within images, that is what you get. You get that context. You don't have the images anymore. So there is no source material. Instead, it's the source context. So if you saw 15 paintings, or any human saw 15 paintings, and wanted to do something that was kind of like most of them, you still don't have the paintings. You have to create something new. Yes, it is a byproduct of all the parameters, all the things it found, and someone said, yeah, you're getting pretty good at this. Yeah, Adam. Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't think it's going to be like that. And the reason it's not going to be like that is because they're clever, and we've been helping them by using these things. And if you go to Midjourney, for example, it has a like or dislike. This is market research. This is QA for them, and they don't have to artificially do it. They just let it out for free, and people do this and complain about it and say what's wrong with it, and maybe it doesn't do this so well right now, but they get the feedback for free. What I'm saying is it won't be like a controlled thing like the product you mentioned. Instead, it's aware that it's a problem and they're going to try and fix it continually. Whereas once it's a controlled physical product, you're done. There's not much you can do about it. But if we keep complaining about it and downvoting things because it changed, and this did happen to me actually. I changed my brown face to a not brown face on images of myself. And if I keep doing that and downvoting it, the company will eventually say, well, we need to refine it. And they can, because it's not a physical thing. Chris? Uh, that's a good question. Uh-huh. Yeah, anything that's heavily structured, it's going to do good at. Maintaining, writing tests. There was they did have a claim that they were going to keep trying to use ChatGPT to figure out how to monetize it by asking it over and over again. I don't know how true that is, or if it's just hype that they were throwing out there to try to get people to use it. I wouldn't be surprised if you could have a really low-level Scrum Master that keeps track of things. No, yeah, right. That is true, but those aren't images. Those are usually Figma, and it has a lot of the parameters in it. So there needs to be a tool that takes a image and turns it into a Figma design, and that would complete the pipeline. Yeah. Okay. No, I think we'll be writing code for a very long, long time. I think once we have a different scope, then we can start to automate those things. When we say things like software development, that's a pretty broad set of skills and talents. Whereas if I want to make something very smallly scoped like a Wix website, well, I can automate most of that, and I can make automated decisions even on that based on whatever parameters. Yeah, Chris? Sure. One thing it could do right now probably is you could feed it all your text and it could QA it for you. Look for, is there a tone? Is there a meaning? Because it can define patterns between it all of your text on your website. So if you have wildly different text from different copywriters, it might be like, wow, this is very different here, and maybe able to point that out. Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely, I mean, even my example, it's a pretty interesting tool for talking with a client who maybe doesn't know exactly the direction they want to go, especially for something that is very important, but also you can go a lot of different directions, like a logo. Once you get into like full on, designing a whole page, you're starting to get some constraints, starting to think about other stuff, but a logo really could be anything, and it could go a ton of different directions, and being able to iterate on that with somebody on the fly without having to make up 15 mock-ups could be a really useful tool. Yeah, Ernest. Sure. Yeah. So you're saying it'll replace me as a software engineer? Um, I think it will replace a lot of software developers that are tasked with making not good stuff. And a lot of times this happens with time crunches and whatnot. This could just work for now, and then I can get a developer, a human developer, to patch it up later. But I could totally see that for sure. Yeah, Ryan. It drops tables on production? I'm kidding. If you let it. Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of the code I've seen is, at least even in Copilot, and which is more geared towards, code. It's okay, and it takes a lot of guidance, and that's why it was called Copilot in the first place. So I think even ChatGPT, I don't think it's appreciably better, but there seems to be a general consensus of it being perfect or better even than that. But I think all of these, if you noticed in the images and everything I used, it doesn't really these things aren't ever shooting for gold. They're shooting for silver, and then you can take it that last bit and take it to gold, unless you have a real time crunch like Ernie was saying. And you know what? It's silver. We're gonna do it. Yeah. Uh. Yeah. Actually, the one of Matt. We have those. They rely too much on Stack Overflow. Right. The text, the hands, all the imperfections are part of it shooting for silver. The hands are very good, but drawing hands and feet is hard. Not necessarily. Sure. Yeah. First off, that's hard to even know because there's so many questions to ask. Like, how are you going to QA that right? You're going to have people do that, and then try to figure out your data sources. And maybe you start to weigh things differently, or you have less of Wikipedia, especially for things that are more subjective. And that's definitely a place where, yeah, something like that. Any other questions, rants? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think also, to that point where this is just the beginning, and these are very generalized for the most part. So when people start training them and trying to hone them and focus them on a particular industry, it will get a lot better at that particular industry. Yeah. No, I mean, the problem with how to train models isn't necessarily the skill set that's going to be, I don't think, is going to be that big. Because of the problem is even if you can train a model really well, do you have enough data to train it? And that seems to be the real problem with all the machine learning is where do I get a large enough data set to do something meaningful? It's with 10 images or, 10 pages of text, you're not going to get appreciable differences. No matter how good you are at training stuff, I don't think. And that's the hard part. And that's why big companies can do this. Yeah. 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 That's definitely one of the things I didn't get to was the sound, just to keep this from going too long. Because I mean, we can keep going. There's lots of other data sources that it can mimic. Yeah, Chris. Oh, and lyrics. ChatGPT can evolve to create lyrics, and then you can generate an image of you dancing to it. So I mean, at this point, we don't need you anymore, Dan. I automated you out. Oh yeah, for sure. So TV shows do that a lot, but enough, different enough. Those musicians' jobs might be in danger. Like John Fogerty might disagree. Yeah. Yes. I think you'll get very good at it, but I don't think it will replace you or anybody who has that kind of liability because then I'm left without anyone to sue. I don't know if that was a good answer. So I don't know if that's a good answer. uh, yeah, Ernest? Yeah, sulfur. Yeah, and yeah, if there's interpretation or anything a human has to actually do, unless it's resetting, like the pinboys, resetting to a very specific state with no wiggle room, it's going to be really hard for a machine to fully replace a human, like on most things, on anything. I think you had your hand up. Mostly GitHub. Yeah. So if you have stuff on GitHub, you, it thanks you. I mean, that's what they say. Yeah, Chris. Yeah, and we're all discovering. Oh, good. Adds up. It adds up. Okay, so I think I'm gonna stop questions and answers. We can all talk with each other. Everyone's free to hang out for a while. I'll be here for a while if you have more questions. And then after I put all the chairs away, I'll probably be heading to the barn light like we usually do, if anybody wants to talk even further. So thanks again for coming. Please eat all the pizza.